It all started on what was supposed to be a quiet Sunday morning. My wife and I had just moved into a new neighborhood, clean streets, trimmed hedges, and a homeowners association that seemed a little too involved. We were unpacking boxes and trying to settle in, just like any other couple. She decided to go for a short walk before lunch, wearing jeans, a casual jacket, and her sidearm fully holstered, legal, and part of her uniform. She's always on call, even on weekends. We didn't expect was the chaos that was about to follow. About 20 minutes later, I heard loud voices from outside. I stepped onto the porch and saw a woman, late 50s, tight curls, HOA badge around her neck, waving her phone around and yelling. She was pacing the sidewalk, glaring at my wife like she'd just spotted a wanted criminal. "You can't walk around here wearing a gun," she screamed, already dialing 911. My wife stayed calm, not saying much, but I could see she was trying hard not to laugh. The HOA lady had no idea who she was dealing with. The cops pulled up within minutes, lights flashing, sirens off. And this is where things took a wild turn. The officer that stepped out instantly recognized my wife, not because she was in trouble, but because she was his new boss. You should have seen the look on the HOA lady's face when she heard the words, "Yes, ma'am. This is Chief Williams." But trust me, it didn't end there. Karen wasn't about to back down quietly. Instead, she doubled down, accusing my wife of impersonating law enforcement, saying the badge was fake, even demanding she be arrested. What happened next? Let's just say this neighborhood was about to learn who really enforces the rules. Now, here's the thing, my wife, Chief Williams, didn't just land that title by chance. She's worked her way up over the years, one tough case at a time. She's earned the respect of her team and the community. She's calm under pressure, knows the law inside and out, and doesn't throw her weight around unless absolutely necessary. But today wasn't about showing off. Authority was about holding her ground with grace. Meanwhile, the HOA lady, let's just call her Karen for now, was still on a mission to make a scene. As more neighbors started to peek out their windows or step onto porches, Karen kept waving her arms, pointing at the badge and holstered weapon, like they were props from a costume party. "This is a family neighborhood. We don't allow open carry here," she shouted. The thing is, not only was my wife completely within her rights, but she wasn't even open carrying in the way Karen imagined. It was clearly part of her uniform, standard issue, department approved. Still, Karen wouldn't listen. Too caught up in her idea of keeping the neighborhood safe, I stood off to the side, jaw clenched, watching this whole thing spiral. The officer who arrived first tried explaining who my wife was, even pulled out his own radio to confirm it for Karen. But Karen just kept going, now demanding the HOA be given authority to approve what kind of uniforms could be worn in. The community? Yes, seriously. At that point, more squad cars rolled up, not because my wife called for backup, but because dispatch thought it was a real weapons-related threat. That's when the crowd really started to grow. And here's where things took another turn. Someone else came forward, another HOA board member, with their own version of the truth. And let's just say, completely changed how this whole thing was about to unfold. The new board member who stepped forward was a man named Rick. He looked nervous, like he wasn't sure if speaking up was the right move, but something in his expression said he'd had enough of Karen's antics. "Actually," he said, clearing his throat, "we were all informed last week that Chief Williams had moved into the neighborhood. It was in the HOA newsletter. Karen, you approved it yourself." Karen spun around like she'd been slapped. "That's not true," she snapped. "There was no mention of weapons. I don't care what title she has. This isn't how we do things here." Her voice was getting shrill now, the crowd clearly uncomfortable. Some people pulled out their phones. Others whispered to each other. Tension buzzed through the air, and I could tell things were about to get messy. But that's when the subplots started to show themselves. Younger woman in a hoodie, someone we hadn't met, yet stepped up and said quietly. She did the same thing to my brother when he wore his firefighter gear after his shift. Said he was scaring the children. A few heads nodded. Another man chimed in. She wrote me up for having a Marine Corps flag on my porch. Said it was non-regulation signage. Turns out, Karen had a history and not a short one. The deeper the crowd dug, the more stories surfaced. Each one painted a picture of someone who used HOA power to push personal biases and control everyone around her. And now that she was face to face with someone who didn't bow to her, she was spiraling. Meanwhile, my wife stayed silent, watching the chaos unfold with that same calm, unreadable face she uses in interrogation rooms. I could tell she was piecing things together. Not just the Karen situation, but something bigger. Something deeper, buried in the way this neighborhood had been run. And judging by the way Rick kept avoiding eye contact, there was a whole lot more to uncover. Vrick didn't say another word after that. He just handed his phone over to my wife, his fingers trembling slightly. She glanced at the screen, and I watched her eyes narrow. Whatever she saw, it wasn't good. Her tone changed, no longer calm and casual, but focused, sharp. She tapped something on the screen and then turned to the nearest officer. I need you to radio the station. Have someone pull the HOA's financial filings from the past 5 years. Get me the name of the association's registered treasurer. Karen's face flushed deep red. Excuse me, you don't have the authority to dig into our finances. This is private, but my wife cut her off. If community funds are being misused, that's criminal, not private. The crowd stirred again. A few people exchanged glances. Someone murmured, "Wait, we've been paying dues for the new park that never got built." Another chimed in, and the security cameras at the clubhouse. Paid for twice, never installed. Now Karen was backed against the fence, her voice starting to crack. This is outrageous. You people are turning on me. I've kept this place in order for over a decade, but it was too late. The story had started unraveling on its own, and that's when the second twist hit. One of the younger officers stepped aside to take a call on his radio. When he came back, he looked confused. Chief, we just got confirmation. The HOA treasurer listed in the filings. It's not Rick, it's someone named Karen Lynn Walters. The silence was deafening. My wife raised an eyebrow. Karen, you're listed as treasurer. Karen opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Then, in a last-ditch effort, she barked. I had to. No one else was handling the money right. I was doing the responsible thing. But Rick finally spoke up, voice low but steady. We never elected her. She put her name on the forms herself. Just like that, what started as a call about a legally holstered weapon had exploded into a full-on community scandal. And something told me we hadn't even reached the worst of it yet. The silence after Rick's words didn't last long. The crowd began murmuring louder, a mix of confusion, anger, and disbelief. Some were recording, others were dialing neighbors. Karen, still standing stiff with her arms crossed, tried to regain control. This is all being twisted, she snapped. The paperwork was just temporary, was keeping things organized until we could vote again. You all know how chaotic it gets when I'm not in charge, but this time, nobody nodded. Nobody backed her up. My wife stepped closer, calm but firm, her badge now visible to everyone. Karen, you're being accused of misrepresentation and misappropriation of community funds. That's no longer an HOA matter. That's a criminal investigation. That's when Karen finally snapped. You think you can walk into this neighborhood and tear down everything I've built? I've kept this place clean, safe, perfect. You don't belong here. None of you do. Her voice cracked as she shouted the last part, and for the first time, Even she seemed to realize how far she'd gone. The officers surrounded her gently but firmly. They didn't need cuffs yet, but the message was clear. Karen didn't resist. She just stood there, breathing heavy. Like all the control she'd clung to was slipping away one breath at a time as they walked her to the patrol car. The neighborhood watched in stunned silence. My wife turned to Rick. "You'll want to call for an emergency board meeting and maybe a full audit." He nodded. Looking like a man who'd just woken up from a long fog, we were about to head back inside when a woman approached us, older, quiet, and carrying a manila envelope. She handed it to my wife. "I think you'll want to see this. I've been keeping records." I knew something wasn't right for years. Inside were photocopies of checks, anonymous letters, and a second set of HOA books completely different from the official ones. Turns out, Karen hadn't just been power-hungry. She'd been covering something up, and we had only scratched the surface. Over the next few weeks, everything came to light. The records in that envelope revealed years of shady dealings, double-billed maintenance fees, ghost vendors, and personal expenses disguised as community improvements. Karen had been funneling HOA funds into her own accounts for nearly a decade, all while enforcing ridiculous rules to keep people distracted and too afraid to question her. With the new evidence, the investigation moved quickly. Charges were filed, and she was officially removed from any HOA involvement. Rick stepped up and worked with a few honest neighbors to rebuild the board. My wife was invited to help as a community liaison, not because of her title, but because people genuinely trusted her after seeing how she handled everything. The neighborhood felt different now, more open, less tense. Folks started waving when they passed by, and for the first time, people actually showed up to HOA meetings. That young woman who'd spoken up about her firefighter brother. She joined the new committee. Turns out, she had a background in community planning. And the man who was told his military flag wasn't allowed. He's now in charge of organizing a new neighborhood appreciation day. The stories people had been keeping to themselves for years were finally being heard. And the fear that once kept everyone quiet was gone. As for us, we finally got back to unpacking boxes and planting flowers out front. No more. No more surprise phone calls from 911. And while my wife rarely talks about that day, she keeps the envelope tucked in her office drawer as a quiet reminder. If there's one thing we've learned, it's this. Sometimes the loudest voice in the room is the one hiding the most. And sometimes all it takes to change a community is standing your ground with quiet strength and a little truth.